From cattle ranch to digital pioneer, how technology should work for you, not against you. In this episode, Kramer, the founder of Cooperative Computing with 40 years of technology experience, shares his extraordinary journey from cattle rancher to digital enablement leader. Through relatable stories spanning from the early days to modern AI, you'll learn why computers should work for humans, not the other way around, and how to navigate the gap between technological hype and reality. I'm your co-host Anthony Perl, and whether you're just starting your digital journey or looking to accelerate your existing efforts, it's time to get enabled digitally. Well, welcome, Kramer, to, the first episode of you being involved in the Cooperative Computing Get Enabled Digitally podcast. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
And I've been looking forward to kicking this conversation off, but I think the first thing that we need to do is just fill the audience a little bit about your extraordinary background.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I don't know if extraordinary is the right term, but I have had a set of journeys that have led me to where I'm at. I've been in tech for about 40 years. I started out as a cattle rancher on a very large ranch, decided that wasn't going to get me where I wanted to with my passion in life. So I joined the Air Force. I spent 10 years in the Air Force and had a unique opportunity while I was in the Air Force to actually work on what I didn't know was advanced technology at that point in time. This thing called ARPANET, and had an opportunity to fly around and install the equipment, test it, get it running, so on and so forth. But that led me into the commercial space. I exited out of the military and spent quite a few years in industrial manufacturing automation, technology services that went around that, deployment of things like ERPs and all the systems that help you, warehouse management, so on and so forth. I've always had a great opportunity then to get my fingers all the way down into things, actually deploy and configure the modules in the ERP, actually go all the way down to the bits and byte level in the assembly code on the PDP 1174s that were running at that point in time, what was considered the internet. So I've had a great hands-on experience that then led me into understanding some very key concepts as I've gotten a chance to transition through that over those 40 years. So that's led me to where I'm at now and the excitement, the passion that we have around the construct of digital enablement.
I mean, starting with a cattle ranch and getting into digital enablement, they're a long way from each other, aren't they?
They are. 100%.
But just tell me a little bit before we get started, the journey in cooperative computing itself, because you've been establishing this business and growing it for a number of years now. I believe it's about 10 years. Tell me a little bit about that journey as well, so the audience has an understanding of how the business itself has grown.
Yeah. So one of the chances I had was to do a jaunt through consulting for a very large consulting firm, one of the top 5 consulting firms. And in the process of doing that, it was a lot of learning, but I also found that in doing that, there was a segment of the market that wasn't actually getting access to what was relevant for that market to actually make decisions from. And so when I started cooperative computing in the early days, it was me and a buddy of mine that kicked things off. And when we did that, there were kind of 3 core concepts. One, computers were supposed to work for us. We weren't supposed to work for them. Thus the name cooperative computing. 2, they were supposed to do a lot more of the mundane tasks and take them off our plate rather than us doing that into an interface and keying them. And 3, the ability to do so cost effectively. The promise was you'd be able to start computing on, advanced compute systems for nickels on the hour versus let's go spend $21 million and get an ERP rolled out. So the construct for what we did in the early days was to try and fulfill that promise. 1, can we make computers work for us instead of them? Can we make certain we do so in a cost-effective manner that still gets value outcome and delivers on a promise to execute something versus here's a slide deck. I sure hope you have fun with that, right? And then 3, can we do so in a meaningful way that adds to the value proposition of what you're using that compute for? as we get into talking about AI somewhere along the path, I see such similar things to what we're seeing in AI as to what was seen in the early days of the internet adoption. And, I remember working on SMTP when it wasn't even there. You couldn't even send mail out. There was a lot of bugs in it, blah, blah, blah. But the value was that I'd be able to send something from me to you that was articulated. It had attachments on it. I could share information quickly rather than doing it through the old means that we had to go back and forth. So from a researcher's perspective and from the ability for us in our life as we transact with those around us to be able to share information quickly, that was the main construct of what can we do for our customers. And it didn't really matter if that customer was a $200 million customer or a $7.8 billion customer, a $50 million customer. We all need access to the art of possible and to do so as accurately and as effectively inside the landscape that you're operating in as a business, so that someone isn't coming in and trying to get you to do something, buy something, change your mind about something that doesn't really bring business value to it. So that's the key construct that we were built on.
And it's interesting, really, because as you talk about it, I'm hearing myself going back in time to remembering when the first computers really became mainstream, and the expectations of what computing would do haven't changed in that overall idea and concept. Just the ability of what can get done has just accelerated. I mean, particularly in the last few years, hasn't it?
Well, I think our expectations haven't really changed that much. The computer is supposed to do all these cool things. I think what we are hearing is messages telling us that you're going to get more than you got before. And somewhere down the path, we'll talk about what's really occurring with AI and machine learning. And if you think about the last 8 months and what you can do today that you couldn't do yesterday, and in my mind, how limited it is. I know there's a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, there's all these amazing things we can do. Well, I can have something write documents for me. I was supposed to do that 20 years ago. Menlo Park and the technology that came out of there said we'd let you do that. They had some really cool tech to whip. So I can write documents. I can grab large quantities of information and suck that information in and do self-training and self-learning. I think those are amazing. But Khan Academy was doing that for me long before I ever got it out of ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. So the expectations that we have of the systems being able to orchestrate my daily life in a more effective manner than I can do myself with reduced error rate, more proficiency, a better outcome. We're still expecting that, but I think we're still a ways off from that realization. For example, the other day I was just trying to get a simple PowerPoint deck put together, I say simple, that orchestrated what happens in the automation of intralogistics within a plant. And so, in the past, I've had to put all the pieces together that says, what does it look like to offload and, upload it onto the truck and then bring it into the shipping department and stick it on the forklift, all the moving parts. I just wanted to build that for me. I just want that moving motion thing for it to build that for me. And I would think today that we'd have the capability to say, build me one of those, and it'd get 20% of the way, 30% of the way there. We're nowhere close. I still had to manually go grab. Now I have some AI slide builders that did help me do it myself. So there's some pieces of that, but we don't want that. Someday you and I want to sit down and tell the computer, I'd like to write a book. Here are the characters. Here are all the components for the storylines. Here's some graphics I'd like in it. And I want them picture quality here, and I want them faded, dusty quality here, and put the first draft of that together. Got to do a little bit more than that. But, that's the expectation that we were told in the Jetsons. And, when the Jetsons first came out was what, 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
So, a little bit longer than that, I think.
Yeah. So, here we are looking forward to being able to achieve what we dreamed during the Jetsons. So our vision and dream, to the actual reality of things, there's this intersection of technology. Since I've gotten the chance to work, all the way down into the depths of it, you see things that start to come together that are force multipliers. The actual automobile it happened by the conflux of 5 or 6 things coming together. And then one big thing was manufacturing. If you could have manufactured that thing at scale, the average Joe still couldn't have been able to buy it. So you had all these things that had to come together to make it real. So I am seeing advancements in the piece parts, just like the early days of computers. You get a motherboard and it'd have, 4K of RAM on it. And then you get one and, oh my gosh, 8K of RAM. And, oh my God, I finally got it. Well, the time from that first iteration to something that was totally usable was probably, if you look at the time span, about 1.5 years before you really had a computer that had all the memory. And then you had floppy drives, and that was an experience. So by the time you really got a computer that you and I would use and say it's commercially viable, it was almost 6.5 years from what the concept was to the final delivery. I think we're going to see things similar to that, except for we're dealing with a lot more sophistication, what we're wanting the systems to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important idea, that idea of what we, is set by lots of different expectations. And, you talk about the Jetsons, and you're going to look at Star Trek or Back to the Future. Where we thought we would be by now is not actually where we are.
That's right.
Even though when we're in the midst of it, it just seems like every business is talking about AI and automations. But is it actually saving time? Is it just added something new to what they're doing versus being efficient in delivering something that's actually effective? Because as you say, the ability for a lot of these things to deliver as we would like them to do is still a fair ways off.
If you look at compute and you think about what it's done along our path, it's taken mundane tasks and it's operationally removed those slowly but surely. And, in the old days, it was, one set of things around financial management, pulling the data in, making sure my GL and my, AP and my, all the financial systems that you used to have to go do on pay. Okay, great. We've automated those. Then we started integrating those systems together. So we're slowly but surely chipping away at the old block of all the mundane tasks. And that vision to get from just mundane tasks to creative and innovative things, I think, is a superpower we're expecting it to have, that is built around a place that we are trying to build it that is very structurally challenged because of the vision that we have for it and the ability for that vision to get executed on the computing systems to do what we want is incremental in how we actually get those things to work. That increment is slower than what we'd like. The goal that in 2030, I can go tell the Android to go cook dinner and clean the house and do this and do that. Well, the mechanics of it is not the hard part. Building the robots and the systems to make sure that fingers work, we'll get past that. The brain inside it that does what we do in our brain at the speed we do it and at the level of accuracy we do it, I think it's just going to be a while before that gets put into real power. If you ever look at the human brain, we're breathing, we're digesting, we're seeing, we're hearing, we're smelling. We're doing over, let's just say roughly 16.5 million computations every microsecond. And we're doing it in a brain this size, and we're water cooled. And we're sufficiently fed on an energy source that is unlimited as long as you can continue to produce food. Someday we'll get there, right? The quantum computer may get down to that size, which allows that entropy process to get solved. But the ability for that to happen is, a ways off on the horizon.
And affordability is a factor in that as well, isn't it? I mean, and that's it's, there are some things that can be built, but the ability to actually make it, achievable for a small business, for example, to utilize is a long way off.
Yes. Well, and I would say that, the monetization strategy that says which business gets to it first, second, and third is always a struggle, right? When Tesla built its first car, it wasn't for you and me, right? You and I wouldn't go buy a $150,000 Roadster, but they needed enough cash influx to do the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing. So I think that is a universal challenge that we all deal with, which is the early adopters are usually the ones paying a little more price for it. But that economic structure, to your point, has to be built into a viable business model for what it is going to look like to go make these things actually do what we want.
So I guess that all brings it into this kind of topic of accelerating into what is an automated economy these days. So tell me a little bit more about what that actually concept means.
Yeah, I think this is super exciting. So, there was an announcement from, the face of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and it wasn't his direct, but there was another blogger that said Facebook is going to automate the advertising business. And so, what does that mean? The automated economy, if you think about the components of an economic structure, right? And that means the ability to actually process and trade goods and services and get some economic return for those things. That automated economy starts to speed up and accelerate the production of those goods, the shipping of those goods and services to the consumer, and then that consumer utilizing those goods either in their own personal life or to flow through to the next consumer. And so, what does the automated economy look like? Now, those things are getting automated in pieces. The manufacturing processes are getting automated at an impressively scalable rate. The production or the reclamation of goods, either through the pulling those things out of the ground, you now have a lot of, John Deere has a highly automated system to go out and plant and actually crop and actually take that crop into something that you can then ship. They've got that process almost 100% automated. So the production of food services and how that works is going up. That's a portion of what the automated economy is all about. So if you take all the components of that automated economy and you think of them in the microcosm of what a business has to do, what that business has to do in its community, what that community has to do in its city, what that city has to do in its county, that county in the state, that state, so on and so forth. Those portions of that automation are going to get increased to the point that the automated economy is what you and I interact with. And that automated economy says these key things about how consumerism works. B2C, B2B, B2C2B, all the blah, blah, blah words, doesn't matter. I want what I want. I want it when I want it. I want it like I want it. And I want it at the value I'm going to attribute to it. So if you can't get it to me at what I think the price point should be, and that varies between the consumer, I've got choices and I'm going to make those switches very, very quickly. And therefore the consumer is driving what's going to happen in this automated economy because I'm wanting that at my hands, at my fingertips. And we do it at the consumer level. And the B2B side of the business is starting to ask for the same thing. So if I'm Caterpillar and I want manufactured parts from a supplier to show up at 2 p.m. and I want them to look like this and I want to pay this for them, I'm going to start to demand that the same way that you and I demand that we can have our food dropped off in the front of our house at, 3 p.m., 30 minutes after I asked for it. And oh, by the way, I forgot the raspberries, send them as well. That whole automated economy is coming together, and the dimension of it is driven by our construct of what we want as consumers.
It's that whole idea of the consumers leading things and led by, and this is the tough part for smaller businesses, isn't it? And, in small and medium businesses referring to here, because in a large scale business, and Amazon, for example, your ability to deliver and develop some of that technology is far greater than perhaps some of the others. But the problem is they're setting the expectation.
The Amazon set the expectation, and then the fast followers that come behind the capability Amazon has demonstrated, right, allows the mid-market segments to start to get produced. For example, there is a technology provider right now that has Amazon-like characteristics so that you can have a Go store and they can actually help you produce a Go store. They've got the technology they put in. They're also hooked up to suppliers. There's a company called BrightPick that fully automates the actual goods coming into and going out of a distribution center or a warehouse. That automation and that hyper automation, if you look at the BrightPick and what they do, and you look at an Amazon system and what they do. Now, Amazon's got the volumes that are maybe 5 or 10 times higher, but you've got companies like BrightPick that are actually enabling I'm going to call it the average person to go deliver on distribution and the supply chain services through intralogistics at a level that's almost equivalent to what an Amazon is doing. Now, the number of things flowing through that Amazon center, so we're going to see that automation happen and start to be distributable across folks that are entrepreneurs that want to do the same thing inside their distribution centers and their warehouses. Amazon leads the way, and they've led the way both organizationally. Do I have the right people to adopt it? The methods and procedures that they have to use to standardize inside the plant and what they do, as well as the ability to hyper automate the robotics and the, I'm going to call it the fleet management for those robotics inside those centers as well. So Amazon's at scale. Alibaba Express is at scale, and they're at a scale where they're handling, trillions and trillions of these line items. But you're going to have competitors now that start to move up into that space and do so effectively because there are third-party providers of those systems that I'm going to call it commoditize that software and technology.
And that's all for this episode of Get Enabled Digitally with Kramer from Cooperative Computing. If you found value in today's conversation about digital enablement, please subscribe and share with colleagues navigating their own transformation journey. For more insights on accelerating into the automated economy, check our show notes for resources and contact information. This show has been produced by podcastdoneforyou.online. I'm Anthony Perl, and until next time, keep moving forward to get enabled digitally.